Very good. Okay. Hopefully everybody can see us. Welcome all of you that are here today. We're so excited to see. Our numbers are sparse, but it's been a week, hasn't it? So thanks for making time to be here, and thanks to all of our virtual friends as well for allowing me to be with all of you. We're grateful today to be able to have this experience to launch. I believe this is our third business recovery class, and so it's great to have all of you here with us. And again, just as a reminder, those are made possible because of funding and partnerships that we have with Davis County and the Davis Chamber of Commerce. And the Davis Chamber of Commerce isn't able to be here live with us today, but we have Darla Jones, who is the Director of Membership for the Chamber, and we're going to turn a moment over to her to tell you a little bit about the Chamber. And she is virtual, so it's happening right now. Okay, we're going to turn that over to Darla.
Darla, you should be live. I'm going to unmute you. Oh, you are unmuted. Go ahead and speak whenever you want to.
Okay, thank you, Amanda. I'm Darla Jones with the Davis Chamber of Commerce, and we're here to help support businesses and help you make key connections. We've got a great networking opportunity for you this coming Tuesday. It'll be at Oak Ridge Country Club from 11:30 until 1. It's our Business Alliance Networking Group. We'd love to have all of you attend. I would love to meet all of you, exchange information, and visit with you about the different ways you can get involved with the Chamber and how we can support your business. So I'm Darla Jones with the Davis Chamber, and I can get some information to you. You can also, if you're online, you can chat with me and exchange your information or leave it with Amanda and Davis Tech team.
Thank you, Darla.
Yes, thank you, Darla. And for those of you in the room, if you have interest in finding out more about the Chamber, you can come and see any of our team, and we'll connect you with them. But the Chamber is a great resource for businesses in Davis County, so please do connect if you have not already. Today, we have a wonderful opportunity to have two presenters here from a company that's local called Max Connect. We have Devin Deaton, who is one of the partners in Max Connect, and we have Phil Case, who is the Chief Client Officer, both amazing gentlemen who are going to teach you a lot about online marketing strategy today. So they will introduce themselves further in their presentation, and we'll turn the time over to them.
Fabulous, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. Hello to everyone who's in the room and those that are attending virtually. My name is Devin Deaton. Like she said, I'm one of the partners at Max Connect Marketing. I'll be presenting along with Phil. We'll do some introductions here in a second. So our presentation today is on online marketing strategy and how our 24/7, 365 strategy works all the time and every day. A little bit about us. For those of you that don't know Max Connect Marketing, we've been in business for 7 years now. Myself and 3 other gentlemen started the company 7 years ago. We were in Kyle Nelson's attic, and we've since grown to a company that has over 40 employees, clients across the country. And we just found out that we were one of the Inc. 5,000 fastest growing companies in the country for 2020. So we're very happy with that accomplishment. Thank you, thank you. We also have what is considered an MA1 status with Google, which means Managed Agency 1, and puts us in the top 1% of agencies that work with Google in the world. So what's cool about that is it's not the top 1% biggest. We're still just a small boutique agency, but based on quality and our understanding of the Google products and everything that we offer for our clients, we put this in the top 1% there, so we're pretty proud of that as well. We like to consider ourselves a boutique digital powerhouse. What does that mean? That means that we combine the most extensive real-time consumer data that's personalized and timely, and we basically can offer that to our clients with what we consider kind of old school customer service, right? We like to say we sit at the same table as all the big boys in the industry, but we're still small enough that we actually care about our clients, we care about their success, and everyone that works at Max Connect is very, very invested in our customers, their future and what happens for them. A little bit of Max Connect by the numbers, just to give you an idea of how many campaigns we're running. These numbers are from last year, 2019, and our team launched 7,874 digital campaigns. Across all our clients, we delivered over 2 billion impressions. We had about 14 million clicks that were generated, 3.5 million conversions, and over 15 million video views. So a lot of agencies in the state and across the country have brought on digital to be a part of their core set. For us, that's all we are. right? So as you can see there from the slide, digital marketing accounts for 93% of our customer revenue. The other 7% is made up with retainers and creative and some small media buying. But we are a digital first agency, and we're pretty proud of that. This is a little kind of one of our mission statements, quotes we live by. We like to say we have a higher calling to create experiences that enhance customers' lives while making a difference in your business. So we take a lot of pride in what we do for our customers. We take a lot of pride in what we do for the community. And we want to make sure not only are we improving our customers' sales, but we're also improving our customers' lives and that in the community as well too. So again, my name is Devin Deaton. I'm one of the partners at Max Connect. I've been in the digital marketing industry for about 12 years. Pretty much right when I went to college, I went to the University of Utah, and I took every course they had in digital marketing, which was about 3 courses. By the time I jumped in and kind of self-taught everything from HTML to JavaScript to CSS to what these cookies were that everyone was talking about, how attribution worked, how tracking worked, how we could target people. Early on in the days, I just spent my own money on some Google Ads campaigns to see what I could do to grow traffic to a blog and just to see what I could do to try to learn it all. I just got fascinated by it. And I saw that it was going to be the future where marketing went. So I've been at Max Connect since the beginning for 7 years now. I oversee the entire digital strategy for our company and our offerings. I also work on big key acquisitions like for guys like Phil to try to help take our agency to the next level. Before Max Connect, I worked at a global agency called MEC in San Francisco. Got to work on some cool brands like Netflix, Chevron, BlackRock Financial. What was cool about that experience is I got to kind of see how Fortune 500 companies were running their digital strategy. But the whole time I kind of knew it was like, eventually I want to come back to Utah where I was from, and I want to take these same strategies but employ them for small and medium-sized businesses that you can actually make an impact on, right? Sometimes when you work with big global brands, you just work with a team, you do these cool ideas, you launch the strategies, and you talk to the marketing team. Yeah, it moves the numbers and it's great. But one thing I love about working with small and medium-sized businesses is you meet directly with the owners, right? When you make a change with a campaign, it can impact their life, impact their well-being, and it's really fun to see that. I pride myself in innovation and adaptation. So the digital products that we offer now and the strategy we employ, even 2 years ago, didn't even exist, right? We always talk about what we're going to do today in 6 months is going to be out of date. We have to continually adapt, continually innovate, and find new ways to drive good results for our customers. I like to consider that I'm focused on real business outcomes. A lot of digital agencies and a lot of digital marketers will focus on impressions, clicks, traffic to the website, and all that's great. But if it doesn't accomplish the real business outcomes for the customer, then it's kind of or not. So I want to make sure that whatever that goal is for that customer, that we're achieving those goals. As you can see on the slide before, as a company, we had over 7,800 campaigns last year. I personally, over the last 7 years, probably launched close to 10,000 digital campaigns. Every industry you could think of, every goal, every channel you could think of, search, display, social video, OTT, and more, which we'll kind of get into all those different channels soon. Now I want to turn the time over to this clicker wants to work coming. Yeah. Yeah, go. Question, please.
Just one thing, as part of your presentation, not everybody might understand some of your acronyms and terminology. So maybe just we'll break it down.
Absolutely.
You can break it
down.
Yep. So impressions.
Absolutely.
All that.
Yeah, we'll talk about all those. We'll talk about specifically about each of these channels. When we say things like display, search, video, social, OTT, what do those mean? We have examples of those as well too. So, but of course, online people too, if you want to jump in the chat, anyone here, don't hesitate to raise your hand and interrupt us. We want this to kind of be collaborative.
Well, great to be with you this morning. I'll just share a little bit of my background. I've been in the advertising industry for 13 years. Responsibilities at Max Connect is overseeing our clients, our growth, our strategic offering, as well as our reputation. Prior to being there, I was the managing partner at Fluid Advertising, actually just down the street from me. I served on the Davis Tech Center Advisory Board. And so not too far, and spent about 11 years there, and had the opportunity to lead the team and see a lot of great growth. I also helped co-found the Utah Outdoor Association. One of my passions, as you can see, is being in the outdoors, in whatever variety that might be. And in the winter, I usually try to get out back and ski a couple of times a year. and every couple of times a week. And, in the summer, for mountain biking, running, hiking, etc. I recently also kind of got into helping medical companies and took a global kind of Chinese medical company public on the NASDAQ in January, raising about $18 million or so. So it's fun I'm not as digitally focused as Devin is. He's the mastermind behind digital. I'm probably a little bit more broad as it relates to a holistic marketing point of view. But we're hoping that today's presentation can kind of complement, what's the big picture, and then how does that apply to your online marketing strategies? So with that, we wanted to take a moment and see if we can get our clicker to work again. There we go. We want to talk about the next normal. So everyone talks about the new normal with COVID, but instead of new normal, we want to call it the next normal because we don't know what's going to come. It seems like there's an apocalyptic type event happening every morning. I was talking to my brother who lives in the Bay Area yesterday, and he made the comment. I said, well, are you going to go to Phoenix, where our parents lived this week or not? He said, I wake up every morning, I check the news, look at what apocalyptic event happened, and then we make a plan for the day. And that's kind of what we almost have to do as marketers or business owners today. And so we can't plan for necessarily what's ahead, but we can adapt. We can be a little bit more adaptable and on our feet. And so we'll kind of talk through that now. Can you not hear me?
I think the book's online.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit.
Okay. And so we want to just spend some time and talk about some of the data and shifts in consumer trends, and hopefully give you some insight and context for what we're going to then spend the balance of the presentation on. Let's see. There we go. So some of the shifts in consumer and business trends, 32% of consumers say they're spending more time on social media. So if you're a business owner or marketer and you're trying to reach individuals, social media is a great place to be. $21.1 billion is the projection for direct-to-consumer e-commerce sales. In other words, and we'll talk about this, a lot of shift has happened from physical retail locations to people purchasing online. In the medical category, there's a 500% increase, as you would imagine. I wonder what percentage of that is just masked, right? It's a new accessory all of us have to wear.
Oh, yeah. You watch you watch all the products go up.
Yeah.
It's skyrocket.
Yeah.
Love, whatnot, basically it's simple supply and demand, but at the same time, they're galvanized.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Hand sanitizer, I never knew was worth $50 a bottle, right? And hopefully that started to level off. And then, just in terms of some of the consumer packaged good, those essentials, those have just skyrocketed in terms of what the increase of demand is. So Shopify CEO, his name's Tobias. I love the comment he made. He said the future we imagine for 2030 has been pulled forward to the present. We're experiencing 2030 right now in terms of digital transformation on our businesses and remote learning and working because of COVID. And so we want to kind of go into this a little bit further as it relates to being digitally first and thinking more omni-channel. We'll spend some time on this. If you're a startup, the good news is you're better positioned than an existing business. A traditional enterprise has had a hard time adapting during this shift. But a startup is a little more nimble. There's perhaps less staff, less entrenched ideas and cultures. 55% of startups have already begun adapting digital business strategy. So that's good news for many, or if not most of you. And being able to continue forward in that regard of adaptation is important. Some of the points here is that customer experience is kind of a new frontier for many of how to handle that digitally speaking. There's a lot of disruptive competition, as well as what that digital buying journey looks like. And so how that's affected your business. We work with a lot of automotive dealers. And, in the early days of COVID and even now, they have to figure out what that digital showroom looks like. Can somebody buy a car soup to nuts without actually stepping into the dealership more than one time? What does that look like? how do they adapt as a business? And so these are the things we think about with COVID. Secondly, go to the next slide. We want to talk a little bit about e-commerce and its dramatic growth. This is insane. From 2009 to 2019, there was a growth of approximately 6% of all retail sales in the United States happened online, e-commerce. And then that grew slowly over the last decade. 2019, it was up to 16%. So in 10 years, it grew 10%. It's grown in an 8-week period with the start of COVID, and it's continued to spike forward. We're now at approximately a 27% penetration of e-commerce. So basically, everything that's purchased right now in the United States, it went from 16 to 27% is now purchased online via e-commerce, and just overnight, over the matter of weeks. I mean, this is a massive change, and so businesses need to adapt.
Something that I've noticed, I find it absolutely funny, personally, is since all this happened, I've noted all the company shifts in trying to get black dollar. No, it's absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
Because there's so much buying power in the black community that everyone is scared that they're not going to get. Because now there are so many different options now as far as people of color, black brands and stuff that are popping up. And people say, hey, no, you want our money, you come and get it.
Yeah.
Because we're not giving it to you anymore. It's absolutely hilarious.
That's interesting.
Because I mean, you see the shift so quickly that, well, since all these things, all these culture shifts and everything going on, you see everyone, changing this, changing that, changing this, changing that. Why did you change it before?
Yeah.
Because you didn't care.
Yeah.
Now, when everyone wants to pull out that money, now because it's bottom line.
So that's an interesting point. Not only are we seeing shifts because of COVID, we're seeing major cultural shifts in our U.S. society, and those shifts are actually impacting how consumers and how businesses need to make choices in terms of how they reach audiences in a sincere way, and being authentic. So here's the takeaways. I won't spend too much time on this, but think about your business and think about, are you an immediacy in your product or service, and are you meeting demand, or are you discretionary? Are you creating need? That, on the discretionary side, your leisure and elective procedure, your jewelry that may not be demanded or needed, your fashion, your home decor. This isn't things that people need necessarily in a pandemic, but can you create need for these discretionary type items? And if you're on the meeting demand side and immediacy, retail shopping, getting a haircut, fast food, recreation, fitness, et cetera, these are things that people are demanding, and we're meeting demand. So think about where you're at in this scale or this spectrum, and how you're responding to meet the, either the demand or ultimately create need. Because this is important as you think about consumers and think about tailoring a message to them. So some takeaways from some things that we've learned and observed is, number one, you need to be flexible. You have to be scalable with your plans. Things need to be turned on and off, potentially on a dime, as it relates to marketing, because of these shifts that are happening. You want a tone of voice that's a little bit more cautious towards consumers, helping them feel certain in uncertain times. So you need that emotional intelligence with what's happening in the world, and being not tone deaf, as we hear many people in Utah, throughout the country, when they make those really stupid remarks, and we think, what are you even talking about? Whether it's about cultural shifts, whether it's about COVID, and everyone that's suffering economically. And so it's important to keep that in mind. One of the quotes that I love, and this came from a global leader over in Europe. He said, "Think like a caring human being with resources to help millions." And so as business owners, and as those in marketing, think about how can we, with the resources we have, potentially help the world, and then act accordingly and act in the mutual interest of both businesses and society. So think beyond yourself, think beyond just profit. And if you do that, people will understand that you're not only authentic but sincere. Focus on values versus just volume. It's not just about merely getting more customers, but the quality of customers and the relationships you're trying to develop right now. Be flexible, be nimble, striving less for perfection and more for impact on the audiences you're trying to reach. Now, one thing that, as Devin and I talked about this several months ago, he made the comment, he said, a customer gained right now during COVID and during really kind of unique times is worth 2x of what it normally would be in regular conditions. In other words, treat them well now and they'll remember you for a while. The customers you do have, those that you're trying to get to know, treat them well, take care of them. They'll remember that and they'll be loyal to you. So let me, sorry. Okay. So one thing Google early on has done just a fantastic job of helping marketers understand what's coming. And their Google Growth Lab, which is constantly experimenting with new products and different things they can take to market and innovation. They said, our reason for existing continues to be driving responsible and sustainable growth. But they said, we have to now focus on a mantra of organizational agility. In other words, we need to adapt. We have to reflect what's happening during the pandemic's, kind of setting. And so there's a few things to think about here. Number one, as it relates to agility, you have to prioritize in your business ruthlessly and often. What's important, what's going to have the biggest impact to your customer base and or your business. Number two, you need to adapt business communication and marketing sometimes immediately. And so if there's a huge storm in Davis County and we're closed for business today, those are things you have to push out on your Google My Business page, social media, email marketing, text messaging campaigns, on your website. And so it's important to have that reflected in your communications. And lastly, you have to stay on top of consumer trends. Devin's going to share a little bit with you on how to look into that and how to see what these consumer trends and patterns are and how this potentially could impact your business. But these are changing. If before these trends we saw shift month over month, year over year, we're seeing week over week shifts right now. And so you have to stay abreast of that and then adapt your campaigns accordingly. So just two quotes here that I love. Willingness to experiment with change may be the most essential ingredient to success at anything. And so just that willingness to experiment and to try different things. And this other quote of the clock speed of business has now gone up in an order of magnitude. We're seeing everything happen just way faster. And so that's kind of the best way to describe today's situation. So we're not planning out 12 to 24 months in advance now for marketing campaigns. We're planning out 30 to 60 day increments on behalf of our clients. So last kind of point on this, and then I'm going to shift to Devin and do a little bit more of a deeper dive on audiences. But number one, embrace the opportunity for a mindset shift. Those brands that have the most solid foundations will be the most successful. And so you want that. You've heard Simon Sinek talk about start with why. That sense of purpose, make sure that that's evident, that people understand who you are and what you believe in. And create value, understanding who your audiences are and what the job to be done is. Understand what they value and how you can complement those values and benefit them and take actions in a genuine way. And then lastly, look at audience signals. And we'll talk through that a little bit more in a moment and share some examples, but lean heavily on search data, Google Trend data, understanding what those insights are and applications to your own business. And this last quote from Shopify that we talked on earlier, it's not the biggest companies or the strongest brands that will survive, but those that are the most adaptable to change. We've seen businesses that at the beginning of the pandemic didn't know what they were going to do and struggling to. They're some of our strongest revenue growth focused clients, as they are in the back half of, this year right now. So it's possible to kind of shift and change what your story will be, but you have to stay on top of it and adapt. And so with that, we're going to shift some time over to Devin and talk a little bit about some shifts we've made on behalf of our clients.
Great, thanks, Bill. Before I dive into the next section, can everyone online hear now? Okay,
Yeah, there was just a moment that they could, as long as you stay further
Stay forward about here?
That's kind of
Okay.
when they say it's good.
yeah, make sure if they, we obviously want everyone to be able to hear the content, whether you're in the room or virtually. So you heard a lot of Phil talk about how COVID-19 has changed the marketing landscape for the present. And there's a lot that happened, there tons of shifts, tons of things we learned. But the number one takeaway, by far, the number one takeaway that we saw from the COVID-19 and what it did is you need to be able to adapt, right? Adaptability. Now, we use that term a lot, adapt. What does that mean? Specifically, it means you need to be able to quickly change your messaging, whether that's on your social media channels, whether that's on your website, whether it's with your digital ads or your TV ads or whatever advertising you may do, you need to be able to change that messaging quickly, within hours. Secondly, you need to be able to adapt your pricing, your product offering, right? The things that you might have offered a few months ago, you need to change the way they're offered. Maybe it's you packaging them differently. Maybe you're pricing them differently. Maybe you're adding a whole new product suite to your offering they didn't even have before. And our customers that were able to adapt were the ones that found success. So we had a number, I mean, I know when the coronavirus first hit and kind of the lockdown happened first in Utah, you know, we're sitting at our house and I'm jumping on phone calls 24/7 with all of our top clients. My wife's just like, what are you telling these people, customers to do? I'm just like, hey, I can't be bothered right now. I'm on another call, another call, another call. And really what we just tried to do was to come up with some sort of strategy to get in front of their customers with a message that was appropriate for their business. And we had to think creatively, we had to think strategically, and we have a few case studies that kind of show our ability to do that and the business outcomes it had for our customers. I don't think it's working now. Good. Okay, so the first one is, to go back here, is a client of ours. We've had them for a long time, Davis Vision Center. So they do LASIK surgeries and other type of eye surgeries. They were ones that they were like, hey, elective procedures are, you know, we can't do those right now. You know, we can't be open. Things like LASIK and that kind of eye corrective surgeries, we can't have those. What are we going to do? Right? We don't have any revenue coming in. We're going to have to lay off our staff. We're going to have to furlough people, whatever it may be. We don't want to do that. You know, how are we going to stay in business? So obviously you can see that they had to shut down their doors. They needed cash flow and they wanted to avoid layoffs. So Kyle Nelson, who's one of my business partners, calls me and we're having an unrelated conversation. And he's telling me that he wants to buy an RV because he's like, I can't do anything right now. I can't go traveling. What are we going to do? My kids are going crazy. I need to buy an RV. But he's like, the problem is they don't have any inventory. He's like, I'm just going to put some money down. And if I put some money down, then as soon as they get some availability, I'll be the first in line. And so I was like, interesting. I was like, maybe we can use that for some of our clients. He's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, you're willing to give a company money right now for a service later on. Like, what about for we work with some cosmetic surgeons and some LASIK surgeons. And I was like, what if we employed that same strategy for them? What if we told them to change their messaging right now on all their advertising, tell their customers, hey, we can't do elective surgeries now, but if you give us $250 deposit, we will give you $1,400 off your surgery when we can perform this. The $1,400 off was always what their messaging was, right? They always had messaging, whether it was spring sale, summer sale, Black Friday sale, whatever it was, that was kind of what their core messaging was anyway. So we thought, man, we could get revenue in the door now, and we could also line up procedures that we're going to have when our doors can reopen. We'll be able to kind of have our cake and eat it too, and it's something they can do, right? So what happened there? So what we saw was after they reopened, they were able to do 78 eyes in May, right? Their leading competitor did 4. So they only had 2 surgeries there, while Davis Vision had, what's the math on that? 34, 37 surgeries, whatever it is. And it became their biggest spring revenue in company history. Now keep in mind, the competitor that they typically go up against, they usually do about the same number of surgeries. Davis Vision does the same number of surgeries as their biggest competitor. But because they were able to adapt, change their messaging quickly, change their pricing and their product offering quickly, they saw huge results in spring. So not only were they happy because they saw huge results, but the doctor who owns the practice called us and he said, the number one thing I'm happy about, more than the fact that we had a huge spring, is I didn't have to lay off a single employee. I didn't have to furlough a single employee. To him, that was the biggest thing. And that's the type of real change that I love to see in companies. Another case study, Phil mentioned that we work a lot with automotive. We have about 200 auto dealers across the country that we work with. I'm sure you guys are familiar with the Murdoch Auto Group here locally. We've been working with those guys for a long time. They were another one. So they came to us and said, you know, we were on pace to have a huge year, we're going to have huge growth month over month, huge growth year over year. But because of COVID-19, obviously that was going to halt their growth dramatically. So they came to us, hey, you guys are the marketing agency, what are some ideas that you have? And so we kind of brainstormed as a team. We're like, well, what can we do? You know, they can't be open for sales. People don't want to come to the dealerships. People are scared. They don't know what to do. But we also sat down and said, it's an interesting time right now because when we were looking at the data from Google, search terms for both new and used cars were up about 30% year over year. So here we thought, like, well, no one's going to be wanting to buy a car right now. We're in the middle of a pandemic. People are, you know, job security is an issue for a lot of people. Everyone's worried. People are going to kind of just be holding tight with their money. But we looked at the stats and we're like, that's interesting because more people are searching for cars than they ever have. Additionally, people were spending about 8 hours a day online, which was crazy. It was by far the most ever in history that people have been spending online. So like people are online and they're looking for cars. Okay, there's a demand there. How can we tap into that? So what we decided to do with them was, hey, let's change your messaging. First of all, let's get a message out there that lets consumers know that we are taking all the precautions necessary for safety reasons. You know, we're sanitizing the vehicle, we're wearing masks, we're doing everything we need to, we're testing our employees, all that kind of good stuff. And then we said, hey, what if we came up with a strategy where they didn't have to have any payments until 2021, right? There's a demand for cars, there's a need for cars, people are spending time online, you have the inventory, but people, the only kind of two obstacles you have to overcome is the finances and then the safety concerns. So if we can address both of those concerns right now, we could do some great things. So immediately we're calling all our designers, hey, everyone's working from home, I need you to change the ads for all of our clients right now. We need to add in the market right now that says 0% financing for 84 months, no payments until 2021. We need messaging that talks about what they're doing with safety for the coronavirus health concerns, and we need those ads done right now. I don't care if you have to work at night, what you got to do, we need them done because we need them in market as soon as possible. So our team all kind of came together. It was really cool to see our team, from the digital team to the creative team, everyone came together. And what resulted with the Murdoch Group was something that we didn't think was even possible. Typically they're, you know, in the top 20 of dealers in the country, but they never had even cracked the top 10 before. And in April, May, and June, they had some of their best months in company history, and they actually became the #2 Hyundai dealer in the country. So it was incredible. The #1 Hyundai dealer in the country is a group out in Florida called Hyundai Newport Richie. They're actually one of our clients too. So we're happy to know that we couldn't take #1 from these guys because they're one of our customers as well too. But it was phenomenal to see that too. You want to talk about some of the home builders?
Yeah.
Okay, turn over to Phil. I'll be right back.
Thank you. It's interesting. We thought that home builders would be hit pretty hard. Who's going to think about moving during a pandemic? It's been crazy. And I think a lot of the shift that we're seeing is California exiting, you know, and looking at Arizona, looking at Nevada, looking at Utah. Every home builder we work with, there's about 7 that are in Utah, Arizona, Nevada, and other parts of the country. But the 7 that are kind of in this region, they're having record months. It's just off the wall, just nuts in terms of nobody having inventory. They can't even begin to keep up. And with this client, Homes, you know, we had a particularly hard time selling a few of the communities. And this kind of came up during this COVID period where some were performing well, others, they just couldn't get traction. And we hadn't yet, you know, turned our digital campaigns to focus or emphasize those particular communities, but they really wanted to re-energize efforts. And so what we tried to do here was really focus on that particular community's geography, the local area around it, and begin to with a product we call native intent or native advertising, really tell a bigger story here. And here's the community and the values and the alignment with that local area. And rather than just advertise, try to really show the authenticity of the client and the ability to connect with them in a more meaningful way. And as we did that, continuing to run our display and social campaigns, we saw some fantastic results. So, you know, it was interesting that the first month we launched this, we sold 4 homes in that particular community. The goal was 1, our goal was 2. The next month, their goal was 1, and we sold 8. And we've continued to just see back-to-back record-setting months for not only those communities, but, you know, statewide on behalf of this client during COVID. I mean, they have continued to grow in all the right areas. One other that I'll mention, I know we've mentioned e-commerce a little bit. Anybody familiar with 4Life? Life Research, they're about a $500 million company located in the Salt Lake Valley. And it was interesting, they were a little bit nervous, as with many, about their product. And so they said, we work with a lot of distributors as kind of an MLM. We want to take the message directly to retail, to consumers. We want to sell direct. And so we began to put together an e-commerce strategy and really begin to build out an effort during COVID to increase direct revenue to them and have that see some great results during the downturn. And so one thing that we did, and some of the insights as the campaign began to run, we noticed that some of their immune system products were performing off the charts. And as we looked at the campaigns, we saw what people were typing into Google, a trend appeared, and some insights from the data. And it was this focus on immune system booster, strengthening, helping my immune system, with COVID and the flu and what everyone was concerned about. We surfaced that. We took that to the CEO and said, we think we need to do something about this. In fact, we think all campaigns need to shift immediately and be focused on, boosting the immune system, all the keywords, the messaging, the landing pages. Let's pivot everything. So this happened within the first month and a half of the campaign. And the company said, hey, let's give it a try and see what we can do. The results of this was they saw 346% growth just over a couple of month period for their direct retail. And it got to the point that their online conversions improved. All of their paid search traffic saw incredible growth in terms of their sell-through, decreasing customer acquisition costs. But what was interesting, that product category of immune system spray, it was off the charts in terms of they couldn't keep it in stock. The company had its overall largest revenue month in history during the campaign. And then the CEO and the legal counsel, they're now trademarking, their entire brand is now focused on the immune system. And so, trying to steer the ship of a $500 million brand and understanding the value of digital marketing and the insights that can be derived and being able to pick up consumer trends not only had massive impact in the short term, but it's really positioned them long term for where they're headed and what that looks like for them. So a couple of case studies we wanted to kind of share with you. Here's what a few businesses did and some of the successes they had. We're going to now turn it back to Devin and talk more on data and insights around who your audience is and how to find them.
Thank you. And obviously, as a marketing agency, we always like to talk about our successes, right? Don't think that we didn't have our failures either. I mean, there were a lot of customers that came to us, and maybe they were kind of more worried about adapting. We had a number of auto dealers actually that were like, yeah, I mean, your strategy sounds great, but we really can't be open right now. I don't know what to do. Let's just pull back spending. Let's just kind of go quiet for a little bit. And we were okay with that. Hey, we get it. It's a nervous time. Those customers, though, that we saw do that, they were hit the hardest. In fact, we had a massive dealer here. They're usually one of the biggest in the state. And they came to us and were like, excuse me, we need to pull back our spending. We need to kind of go dark for a while until we figure out what's out. So we did that. We paused all their campaigns. They were trying to basically get to a profit number by cutting expenses rather than by increasing revenue. And they came to us about a week later and they're like, we're getting crushed. We aren't selling any cars, and we're hearing all our competitors selling cars. We're kind of like, yeah, well, we told you need to be keeping advertising and change your messaging. But, you need to be able to adapt. Those that weren't, they were hurt the worst too. So obviously we like to show our successes, but don't think that we didn't have our failures as well too. All right, data and insights. Again, if any of this stuff is unclear, please don't hesitate to stop, ask what we're talking about. So you're going to see this slide a couple of times. We refer to it as the hourglass slide. More than anything, this is kind of sums up our whole entire approach. Thank you. Sums up our whole entire approach as a company in kind of one slide. Our philosophy, kind of what we do, how everything is kind of built, and it's with this hourglass right here. So at the top, you can see these are all different data points that we can gather, right? Everything that we do as a company, we like to call it data-driven marketing. Now, when we say data-driven marketing, what does that mean? That means that we're going to utilize data to drive the marketing actions, drive the strategies, drive the audiences. So with that, you get transactional data of what people are buying online. You obviously want to have some geo-targeting in there to make sure you're hitting the right areas that your customers are, in or you think they're in. You want to layer it on with online intent. What I mean by online intent is every time you do something online, every time you search something, every time you read an article, watch a video, whatever publisher that is on, they're going to sell that data to exchanges, and you can buy that data to say like, hey, I know that this person is looking for a new car. So you want to layer that on too. Demographic obviously as well, it's important there too. And same with psychographics, what people are interested in, what they like to do, what their passions are. So we like to look at all of those things and take all the data we have to then build an audience, right? So you can see in the middle there, we come hyper-targeted audiences. So for there, we know here's what these people are, here's kind of what their tendencies are, here's what they're in the market for, here's where they live, here's what the demographics look like. Okay, now let's come up with the messaging to hit those people, and then we're going to deliver ads across all the different channels. And we say channels, we'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. That's essentially all the areas that you're going to deliver ads to them. So right now I want to focus on the top part of that hourglass, which is the data. Oops. Okay. Who in here or online is familiar with Google Analytics? Most of you guys? If you're not, get familiar with it. If you have any sort of business, I don't care if it's an online business, if it's a retailer, if it's brick and mortar service business, whatever it is, in the 12 years I've been doing digital marketing, I still think that Google Analytics is at the absolute most powerful digital tool at your disposal, and it's absolutely free. So until you get up to a huge threshold, then you want to get something like Google Analytics 360, then it costs money. But for every business we've come across, whether they're one employee, mom and pop shop, to people who have hundreds of employees that do tens of millions of revenue every year, Google Analytics is a free tool that has so much data and there's so much insights in there. I jump in there every day for the last 10 years and I still find out new things all the time. So I would say the biggest takeaway from today is go look up Google Analytics, look how to get it implemented on your website, and then jump in there and start using it. Why would you want to start using it? Well, there's a lot of cool things that show on there. Not only can you see like what is bringing people to your website, what campaigns, what type of traffic sources you have, you can gather some insights into what your audiences look like. So a really cool thing they have here is demographic breakdown. So once you jump into your analytics, this is a screenshot from one of our customers' analytics, 4 Horsemen Racing. They sell aftermarket auto parts. So you can kind of come here and, okay, let's start looking at people who buy from them. What do their users look like? You can look here and you're looking at this, okay, what are my takeaways? Okay, well, 32% of these people are between the age of 25 and 34, and 87% of them are male. Now, some of the stuff you might already know, right? You know your customers, you know what their demographics look like. So sometimes you might go in there and be like, that's not totally surprising, but it's good just to show that the data can kind of back up what you might already be thinking. So, all right, we got 87% male, 32% between the ages of 25 and 34. All right, starting to paint the picture. All right, let's dive in a little more. Let's look at some of their audience insights. What do these people have affinities for? What are their passions? What are they in the market for? Right, so you can look at some of these, and obviously, this customer sells aftermarket auto parts. So when you look over on the end market segment, it makes sense that they're in the market for auto accessories. Yeah, all right, I would get that. They're in the market for cars, all that kind of stuff. That makes sense to me, right? Or are there any things that are kind of enlightening? Some of the things I look at here that I would pull out of this are, okay, these people are outdoor enthusiasts. That's interesting. The customer never once told us that, hey, we feel like our customer base is outdoor enthusiasts. They always just say that they're auto enthusiasts. Go ahead, please.
Are these generalized categories or are they
So these are generalized categories that are specific to the business you're looking at. So what we're doing here is we're looking at the Google Analytics account of a particular business. And then these return, okay, of the people that come to your website, here are some of the things that they're in the market for. Here's what kind of some of their passions are. And they all have this other categories too. So as you switch to different analytics accounts, if I'm looking at 4 Horsemen Racing, for example, then I jump over to Murdoch, then I jump over to 4Life. These things are going to change dramatically because they're specific to the people that come to that client's website. Does that answer your question? Okay. So another thing I look at, do-it-yourselfers. That kind of makes sense. I would think, people who are gearheads, auto enthusiasts, they're kind of do-it-yourselfers, right? They're the ones getting in there in the engines, kind of changing things out. Okay, that's great. Sports fans. Again, client never told us that they're sports fans. They always just say they're auto enthusiasts. So then I can look at, okay, we got some outdoor enthusiasts and some sports fans. And in this other category, it shows that 13.85% of their customers have recently had a job change or started a new job. About almost 12% of them have recently moved or relocated. That's interesting. So you can kind of start to gather some insights into these audiences. And then lastly on there, they consume a lot of online video. So we pull these things out. Some of these we already knew, but we have here, okay, kind of some of the big things are the DIYers, the auto enthusiasts, they have high performance cars. Yeah, those three things we probably already knew about our customer base, right? But recently moved, got a new job, that's new. Sports fans, that's also new. Outdoor enthusiasts and online video, those are new. So those are things I can take action items that I can maybe go change my marketing plan.
Okay. I'm not sure.
Yeah, please do.
What I do is, I'm a caterer,
Okay,
and my mainstay right now is I cater.
awesome. And I can read this question too. I know the
No, I mean, I cater for private guests. So I've been watching the data and stuff like that, kind of watching online what's going on, and I come across, hey, net checks is instead of, the old philosophy start taking away, they're adding. I'm like, okay, here's a company that's, yeah, they cater to wealthy clients, but the wealth it's almost becoming more affordable.
Yeah,
And it's becoming a easier way to travel. Affordable travel. You don't have to be super wealthy or wealthy to actually take a private jet. I come across a lot of diversity of people. So for me, I'm saying to myself, okay, how can I tap into this? Am I running two different types of menus, or because I have one menu on my website for just just for jets. And should I just another one to say, okay, hey, I'm affordable to folks out here in the real world, or whatever you want to call it. But I also have this over here for jets. Should I break it up into sections so I can get a definite demographic, what my customer base is?
absolutely. I think you're thinking about the perfect way. So for those that are attending virtually, the question kind of got brought up is the gentleman here does catering for private jets. He's noticed over the last few years or whatever, maybe the super high net worth individuals were the only ones that were flying on jets. Now it's become more affordable. Now it's become more affordable for maybe that next tier down. So he's looking at the data thinking, hey, should I maybe change my menu offering, right? Maybe you have one menu offering that's super high end, very expensive, very nice. Well, should you have another menu offering that's maybe a little down, but a little more regular? Anyway, I think you're thinking about the perfect way. And that's the exact stuff we're trying to get from here. It doesn't necessarily mean you need to change your paid search copy or your display ads. We're talking about changing your actual business offering. What we mentioned earlier, you got to adapt, you got to change your product and your pricing and your offering. That's exactly right. I think you absolutely should. It should be here's menu A, here's menu B, to kind of cater to different customers. And we'll get into it a little bit more later, but that's exactly what we're getting to. Is once you start to find out different audience groups that you have, you want to speak to them differently. So keeping on with this, insights, we like to build what we call personas, right? So all that data that we just looked at about, DIY owns a high performance car, for customers, we think it helps kind of make it come to life when we give the person a name, an image, like here's what we're talking about. So all that data we just looked at, we have Kyle here, right? Kyle is a DIY high performance car enthusiast. He owns a used high performance car. He likes to do his own work on his car. He recently just got a new job and he loves spending time outdoors. Now when we kind of collaborate with our team, we go with our customer, we can kind of create a marketing campaign around Kyle. Now, Google Analytics is great. There's also some other ways that you can kind of get more granular insights into your audiences. And these are through different placing pixels on your website that gather data about your audiences. To kind of explain what a pixel is, essentially it's a piece of code you place on your website that gets fired when the website loads, and it gathers data about the people that come to your website, puts it into a system, and then can kind of tell you things about those people. So when you kind of graduate from just Google Analytics, you're like, okay, well, I want to kind of use some more audience insights. There's different things called demand-side platforms, different data providers, ways that you can kind of gather more data about the people. There's some other analytics tools like Adobe and things like that. If you have more questions on them, you can come and ask us. But this is kind of hard to see on this slide. But what this does, this gives you very specific things that your audience is also in the market for, characteristics about them. Kind of like we were looking at with Google Analytics, but just on a more granular basis. So you can see here, this was a pixel we placed on the client's website. We usually like to place it there for a couple of weeks to gather data. Then we can kind of come back to our customer and say, okay, you might have thought your audience looked like this, and some of these things are going to be familiar to them. Here's some really cool insights we found about your audience. So here you can see the first thing that we saw was that their auto ownership was a minivan. So the majority of the people that went to their website, they own a minivan.
Good.
Okay. It also saw that they are trampoline shoppers with extreme confidence. It means like it's a good likelihood that some of the people that went there are buying trampolines. This is not a trampoline company. They don't sell trampolines. We actually have a customer that does. Or for this one, it wasn't that. So that was an interesting takeaway. Okay. Kind of going on, we looked at they are country music fans. They're registered dietitians. They've been looking at the homeschooling. They like charity and philanthropy. They like to read celebrity and news gossip, age 25 to 29. They shop at Costco, baby supplies, and so forth. Okay, so what we can gather is this persona, right? We call this person Rachel. Please.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
When you're gathering all that data, do you do it on people just that are landing in your site, so they're landing, or do you only look at the people that have actually purchased? So they're
Awesome question.
Great question.
Great question. So for those that are online, the question was, when we're gathering the data from people that come to the website, are we gathering it from anyone who comes to the website or only people that purchase? And the answer is both. Ideally, if you have enough web traffic, you would want to know the people who are purchasing, right? Because that's kind of the lowest funnel. But there's different reasons to do different, to like gather different audiences. So let's say you're like, okay, we gathered all the data of people who purchased from our website. That's going to be like the best kind of case of who your customers are. Well, maybe we want to look at just people who added to cart but didn't purchase. What do we know about them? Is there something different about those people than the ones that purchased that we can kind of maybe move them down the path? Now, what if you're someone who isn't an e-commerce customer? The majority of our clients actually are not e-commerce. Then what we like to do is look at different kind of engagements or conversions on the website. So we might say, okay, what about people who view 5 pages? What about for an auto dealer, someone that comes and looks at a specific car? We call it a VDP, a vehicle details page view. We know that they're a little more low funnel than someone that just comes to the website. So you can actually build audiences based on what the people are doing on the website to kind of get a more accurate picture. So that's a great question. So ideally, if they're getting a lot of purchases, we want to say, okay, of the people who purchased, here's things we know about them. So we have Rachel. She's a stay-at-home mom. She's about 29 years old, has 2 to 3 kids at home. She's considering homeschooling. I think everyone right now is, right? Drives a minivan, shops at Costco, and saves money with coupons. Listens to country music, watches Fox News, and loves celebrity gossip. And provides service to her community through charities. So we have a persona, we want to speak to Rachel. Then we would kind of collaborate as a team. What can we kind of do to deliver a campaign that hits Rachel and similar people like her? Just another example of it. We'll kind of go through this one a little quicker. This is for another client. So this kind of breaks out how we can get kind of individual data segments if we want. So this client was like, hey, I want to break it out by age and so forth. So again, we place the pixel on their website. And you can get this from Google Analytics too. So again, that free tool. We saw here that there's a bunch of different data providers. So all these things you see on the left, Newstar, PlaceIQ, IOTA, AmeriLink, they're just different data providers out there. It shows, okay, people are 55 plus, 45 to 54, 55 plus, 55 to 64. So we know the majority of their audience is about 45 to 64. Okay, great. What does their income look like? Kind of you were talking about. So you can come in here and look at, okay, it looks like their people are 75 to 100K household income, 100K plus, 100 to 200K, 75K plus. So we know that it's a little higher household income. They're about 75 to probably 150K range. Please.
How would I grab data, because how am I going to grab data for, corporate America? Because I'm looking at, okay, hey, yeah, I want to hit the affordable, but I also want to keep that strong track because now, more than ever, with the airport coming along, which is huge, you're going to have a lot more corporate traffic coming in. You see all these corporate businesses coming in. How can I get that data on what corporations are coming through on a regular basis? So then I can literally just target and say, hey, instead of using a NetJet or a Air Conair, I'm your local guy.
Absolutely. So the 2 ways you're going to get data is either going to be your first party data, which is by placing pixels on your own website, right? So if you these screenshots are from a demand side platform we use, and they basically, you create an account with it. These ones do cost, but essentially you get a dashboard into their platform. Now with their platform, you can then place a pixel on your website. And then anyone who comes to your website, it will start gathering data about those people. And it also tracks everywhere else they go online, and that's kind of where it comes back with this data for you.
Maybe I'm not misunderstanding, but it sounds like, are they filling out questionnaire or
Nope.
what, just pop up
We watch their every move.
So essentially how it works is someone, and this is with all websites, all data providers, all analytics companies, everywhere you go online. When you come to the website, they're going to place a cookie on your computer, right? That then allows them to track you. It also allows them to look into what other cookies you have on there to start to build a persona of you. So the other, like people like PlaceIQ and Xlate and BlueKite, they have all this data on customers, right? So they kind of know before you come to the website, here's a lot of stuff we know about you. When you come to the website and you cookie that person, their system can then go in there and look at, okay, what other cookies they have on there? What else do we know about these people? So now all these people are selling data to each other, right? So that's why all this stuff costs. You look in here, like to buy this, Lodomi data, it's 75 cents per CPM. To buy the Oracle data, it's 60 cents CPM. But they're allowing you to say, hey, here's what we know about these people. Now, if you want to buy this data, great. So that's getting first-party data. So again, you place the pixel on your website. When they come there, you drop a cookie, it gathers data for you. Now, the other way to do it is to go buy it from someone, right? So if there was an organization that said, hey, we have a list of all the corporations that are coming in, and you can buy, a lot of times it's just going to come in an Excel file, say, hey, here's the corporations that have trips lined up here, and then you can kind of create a campaign around them on like a LinkedIn or something like that. Yep.
This is something that I got on your website. They do a survey. Something that you track cookies.
Correct. Yeah, correct. Yep. Now, if you have like a form on your website where you were gathering some of this information, you had all this, well, then the great thing about it is it would be like your first party proprietary data, and then you would be able to use that for free essentially, right? So what these softwares, these demand side platform softwares allow you to do is to gather the data on those people, and then they say, okay, here we're going to show you what your customers look like. Now, if you want to then market to those people using the data, you got to pay for it. Gathering the data is actually free. It's just then if you want to exercise on it, it costs money. Yeah, great question.
We have an online question as well. Do cookies apply to mobile devices as well?
Yeah, except the industry's kind of going away from cookies. And so a lot of these we are too, but a lot of these analytics companies and a lot of these demand side platforms, they're going to be tasked with figuring out what the next way to track people are. So people are, they're disablling cookies, they're clearing their cache, they're doing that kind of stuff. Mobile doesn't have cookies on most devices now. So now they have like cookieless ways of doing it. So the way they're doing it's changing, but what you're accomplishing is going to be the same. So.
This is something that you have to go on your website to let them know that you are this cookie.
Correct. So the question was, is there something you need to put on your website, like a disclaimer that lets people know that you're going to be tracking them with cookies? And the answer is yes. And you probably saw over the last year, every website now you've gone to has a pop-up that says like, hey, in order to use the website, you got to accept our terms. View our terms here. You don't have to, and that most people just click accept and go and move forward. But yeah, to be compliant now with pretty much most publishers and that, most like website host providers and that, you have to listen to our disclaimer up there. So a lot of people get worried. A lot of consumers get worried about cookies, right? Hey, they're tracking me, they know what I'm doing. Keep in mind, there's no personally identifiable information that is allowed to transfer between different publishers and different data providers. Anyone that is found grabbing personally identifiable information, like actual names, things like that, they get risk of being huge lawsuits from different organizations. So that's one thing I always tell people is like, there's no PII. You'll hear that a lot. No personally identifiable information that's getting passed through. They know pretty much everything about you except all the stuff that's personally identifiable. But I look at like, would you rather get served relevant ads? Would you rather get delivered relevant content than not?
Yeah, that's almost.
It's scary. Yeah. Yeah. I think it was in 2018 they said the value of data surpassed the value of oil.
I mean, when I bought my iPhone, so I bought my new iPhone and I put my old one together and literally backwards. It's like I never knew
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what gets scary with it. And that's why, you know, the cybersecurity and all that's such a huge industry as well too. It's not working now. We'll kind of skip through some of that. I think we touched on it enough. You can see TV viewership. You can see if they've been philanthropic, whatever it may be. What we like to do is when you kind of go and look at the data, go in there with like a blank slate. You don't want to have preconceived notions about your customers. You kind of really want to let the data decide what's going on. So for this customer, we created a guy named Ben, who's a culture professional. He's 52 years old, has a solid job earning him 100K plus a year, prides himself in staying informed with the news, and has a propensity to donate. So again, we create campaigns around this person. Okay, shifting gears a little bit. Who here is familiar with Google Trends? Okay, we got a couple here. Google Trends is awesome. Google Trends is a great tool that you can go in there and basically put in any search query you want, any search term, and it's going to show you the search volume for any search query you want to look at. It will plot the volume over time to see trends. It's going to show you the volume broken out by location. It will also show you related search queries that are similar to the query that you looked at. So you can put in a search term, whatever you want it to be, you know, Hyundai Elantra dealer, whatever it is, Davis Tech, and it's going to say, okay, here's the search volume. Here's where the search volume is coming from. And here are other things that those people also searched. Again, this is a free tool that Google offers. You can just Google Trends. You'll go there and mess around with it. It's really fun to look at. It allows you to compare keywords side by side, which is cool. So let's say if your business, you wanted to think, hey, are people, let's say you're putting together your paid search strategy. When I say paid search strategy, I'm talking about ads that you see on Google. When someone searches something at the top, you see the ad, and then below you see the organic listings. That's called paid search. Also referred to as SEM, PPC, that kind of stuff. We'll get into a little more about that later. But you're putting together your paid search campaign, and you're putting in the different keywords. And you're like, okay, are people searching this keyword or are they searching this? Well, put them in Google Trends, and it'll show you. It'll say, well, actually, your customers are searching it this way more than they are this way. So some cool stuff you can do. So this is a screenshot I took last night of a search query of the interest over time for the last 2 years. Who can guess what that search query is? Corona? Wind? I like it. Corona might have spiked before though. Anyone else? It is face masks.
Oh.
Right? No one was searching face masks before. I mean, here and there a little bit, maybe for sports things or whatever it might have been. But you can just see how that trend has just spiked. Right? Now everyone in the world has a search term. Everyone has to have 50 of them because they lose them everywhere. I swear I've bought 10 of them, and every time I wear one, I lose it. My wife can't stand it. But anyway, it'll show you like the term. Then you can kind of jump in and see, okay, where are people searching? Right now, the biggest index is coming from New Hampshire. I would have thought it was New York. I mean, it's closely related, but I would have thought it was New York, California for sure, 1 and 2. Maine, Hawaii, Vermont, Rhode Island. It'll also tell you the related searches. So of the people that searched face masks, the #1 related search to that was COVID masks, then COVID face masks, then USA made face masks. Now that one to me as a marketer is interesting, right? Because that's something that a company who offers these could use to differentiate it, right? There's a huge demand for people searching for USA made face masks. Please go ahead.
Isn't there a drop down there? Are also most
For sure.
and those are kind of the ones that are accelerating.
Yep, yeah, like in that, like there are ones more that are trending. But absolutely, you can jump in here and do most popular, trending. Then on the region, you can break it out by city, country. They have the same with the related topics. You can do the same thing too. The most volume, what's rising, what's trending. So that's a good point. You can come in here and US made face masks might not be the most searched, but it's on the rise, right? So great. And with all these tools, there's so much in there. What I always tell people is to get in and get your hands dirty, right? Mess around with it. You're not going to ruin Google Trends software. Just go mess around, click buttons, and kind of get dirty with it.
How is this broken down? Can you break it down more to like state, each county, or is it just by state?
Yeah, you can break it down by each state, each county. Great question. So if you come back on this slide, you can see right under where the box says face masks, there's a drop down where it says United States. And for those that are on virtually, the question was, can you break this down further just to look at the trends by region or by city or by county and then look at related terms? And the answer is yes. So you can jump in there and you drop down, you can see different countries, you can see states, you can see cities, you can plot it over time, you can look at web searches versus image searches versus mobile searches. There's a ton you can do in there. Another question here?
Online there, asking, is this information on Google?
Yes. Yep, absolutely, it does. So you can look at it, 2 weeks from now, 2 days from now, and it's going to change. So that's a great question. The real question, I guess the one person asked it, but the question was, does this data change on a daily basis? And the answer is yes. So it's real-time data. It's really fascinating stuff to look in there. I mean, you can kind of get overwhelmed with this. Sometimes there's more data than you really need to, but I geek out over the data, so I can get lost in it.
So is this information, is it free? Any access?
Yep, great question. Those online, the question was, is this Google Trends data free and how do you access it? The answer is yes, it's free. And the easiest way is to go to Google and search Google Trends. There you go.
There you go.
Exactly. And it'll show up there, and obviously you can jump and use it as much as you want. So it can track, it's really cool stuff. We're big fans of Google, as you can see. Sometimes it just keeps, go ahead. And then you're next.
As I'm listening to you talk about this, I'm kind of thinking in my head.
I like your thinking.
For one of the topics that just came up was like corporate travel to Utah. I'm gonna put that. How do I take that data? How do I
Yep.
Because I know for a fact that I get calls from all over the country and all over the world. Okay, I mean, and how do I take that? I have people that are calling, they email me, but all over the country, all over the world. How can I translate that into me?
Great question. So those online, the question was, okay, I use Google Trends, I get some information on there. How can I use that to improve my marketing? So one caveat I'll say first before I get into how you use it is it won't show you trends for every search term. Meaning if there's not enough volume, it would just come back null. So if you say like corporate travel, Salt Lake City, Utah, March or something like that, it might just come back with, hey, there's no trend data here. So keep in mind, you got to make sure that it's a search term that is getting searched enough. So if you try one query and it's not showing up, maybe try a similar related one. Okay, so how you would use it. The two ways I would think you'd want to use it would be, one, if you have like a paid search campaign or any sort of kind of targeted campaigns, if it's keyword based, what I would go and look at is, okay, what are the people searching? So corporate travel to Utah, you put that in there and it'll show you the interest over time. But like we talked about earlier, you might go look at that drop down and say, well, actually most people are searching corporate travel to Salt Lake City, or corporate travel to the West, or private travel. Maybe they don't say corporate, but they say private travel, or they say jets, whatever it is. That will kind of show you, here's what people are searching more frequently than what I thought they were. So that's one way you can use it, because then you can put those keywords into your campaign to go after that. You could also maybe change your messaging on your website. So if most people are calling it private travel versus corporate travel, maybe you want to change the way you say it on your website. The second way would be from a geo-targeting perspective. So you say you get calls from all over the world, I'm sure you do. You might want to go there and be like, okay, well, I don't have an advertising budget to hit everywhere, right? And maybe I can't even hit the top 20 cities that people call me from, but I can hit the top 10. So then you can go in there and you can be like, well, I might be getting calls from these areas, but actually the hottest area is San Francisco. But I'm not getting calls there. Or maybe you could kind of improve the marketing and you kind of geo-target those specific areas. So yeah, from a geo-targeting perspective, where it tells you the most searches are coming from, and then also from the related searches would be the biggest ways I'd use it.
Because I almost thought about, just once again, we were talking about it. It's like, okay, seasonal.
Mm-hmm.
Because before COVID, Utah is booming for, outdoor travel in the summer months. Winter, here comes, the Booming Festival.
Yep.
Ski season. Once again, I mean, just literally for travel.
Totally. So, I mean, obviously COVID's thrown a wrench in everyone's works, but you could go, what's cool is that you can plot this back, I think to like 2000. Don't quote me on that, but you can look back pretty far and you could totally see trends, right? So you could be like, hey man, it seems like every March there's this huge trend I didn't know about. Let's dive into what that is, or is that how the planning cycle is or whatever. So there's a lot of cool stuff you can improve that with. Another question here.
Web-based Google Trends data, same data provided.
So the question was, is the web-based Google Trends data the same data that is provided in the Google Analytics app? And the answer is no. So Google Trends data is going to show you trends of everyone worldwide. So that's why they call it trend, right? It's going to say, okay, here's what everyone's searching, similar keywords, volume on that. Google Analytics is going to show you data just for your website. So two very, very different things. One just kind of shows what the search volume is for the entire population, what's trending, and Google Analytics is only going to show you data for people that are coming to your website. So good question, two very different. Before I turn it back over to Phil. Yeah.
Right. I would just want to, for a moment, talk about other data sources you can look at. And I know we've talked a lot about data. Our focus is, rather than just blindly run a digital marketing campaign and hope it sticks, first understand who you're talking to and let the data inform you of how and where you should spend your dollar. So another thing is, what do you know about your current customers? Those that you're already working with, what's the job to be done? Has anybody heard the job to be done milkshake story from McDonald's before? So McDonald's hired a consulting firm and said, why do people, why do we get an inordinate amount of people that get a shake in the morning at 8 a.m. or 7:30 a.m.? What's the reason for that? Is there just a bunch of unhealthy people that just eat chocolate that early? And they couldn't figure it out. And this consulting firm did the research, understood the data, and said, look, you need to ask the question, what's the job to be done? Why are they coming to you to begin with? How are you helping meet a need or demand that you didn't know about? And what they found was people could eat a banana on the way to work, but it wasn't filling enough, or a piece of toast, or yogurt or cereal's too messy. But they found that a chocolate shake in busy traffic would get them from point A to point B. It would last the whole time. It was delicious, refreshing, and it filled them until lunch. And that's what they hired that milkshake to do. And so ask yourself in your business, what's the job to be done? Why are they hiring me? What are they hiring me for? And how can I help them and look at their advantage? Secondly, look at your social data. So you'll notice here, I pulled this, I won't tell you who, but this individual or this client, large restaurant and a food and beverage chain, and they, 75% of their fan base is female, and between the ages of 25 to 34, and we can tell where they're located by city and languages, and there's other hobbies and interests. So this is just going to Facebook and saying, tell me who likes my page or who interacts with my comments or who likes my post or views them. This is great data for you to understand who's reacting and responding to me online and social. And then the last thing I would say is, if you collect email addresses, if you collect phone numbers, if you collect names, that customer database, not only can you market to them, you can take that database, you can upload it to LinkedIn, you can upload it to Facebook and say, I want to find people like them. It's called a lookalike audience. I want to find people that look like them. So you might only have an audience of, say, 500 people that you say, these are my customers. You upload it into Facebook and they say, we found 500,000 more potential people that fit the mold of those individuals you classified as customers. There's a lot you can do with this. So just wanted to give you some insight there. We had, if you mind just going to the next, we had a little bit of a workshop portion. We may skip because there's been a lot of just great dialogue. But let me just give you some insights. You understand who your customer is, and then you say, what's their journey? How does what we offer relate to what they need? And what does that experience look like of coming together? And we call that a customer journey. And so there's a lot of ways to do this. This is for a client that we talked about the awareness phase. We talked about considering to, I purchase now a product from you, to, I want to retain you as a customer, to, will you be my advocate and tell others about it? And so we mapped all of the touch points that they potentially had as a brand and how to stay consistently in front of them. So we've prepared for you. We have up here at the front, for those virtually, if we want to either hand those out, and then I believe there's an Excel file that we'll make sure all in-person and digital attendees get. This was a workshop I wanted to walk through and have you spend 15 to 20 minutes and actually think about this on behalf of one of your audiences, one of those types of customers that you serve. This exercise is so remarkably helpful and very insightful for you running a business. And so I'll just introduce this. So this is an activity that you'll be able to do. In this kind of scenario, we highlighted what's the customer, how do we get their attention? How do we keep their interest as they're researching? When it comes to a decision, are we involved in that process? To, have they made an action? Have they purchased? Have they walked into your store or restaurant? To, how do we keep them loyal and an advocate of our brand for business? So those are 5 potential stages. Yours might be different. You want to adapt that. And then importantly, as part of this, in each one of these squares, you say, okay, during this getting their attention phase, what is the customer doing? Are they going into Google? Are they typing things? What are they looking for? Are they online? Are they talking to friends and families and looking for recommendations? What are they doing? Next step, what are they thinking? How do I get into their mind a little bit? And some of the things that Devin shared help with that. What are they in market for? What affinities do they have? Next is, what are they feeling? What's maybe their emotional, kind of state of being? Is it frustration? Is it excitement? They're purchasing a new car, a home, etc. And then lastly, what's that experience that they're having or hoping? And then the brand or business, you then can think about, well, what are the opportunities or takeaway for me? What can I do differently? How can I consistently stay with them as a brand? So when we think about mapping a customer journey and experience, you want to make sure that every customer journey experience begins far before they ever talk to you. In fact, in today's world, usually 75 to 95 to 90% of the research happens before they call you, fill out a form, walk into your store, purchase from you. And so it's important that you've constructed or orchestrated a wonderful experience before. Any questions on this? I know this is a lot of information. So this is an activity exercise we'd highly recommend that you walk through. So we're going to go a little bit more into hyper-targeting audiences. I'm going to hand it back to Devin and talk about some of these marketing channels in a moment. But to give you an idea, this bottom half, as you can see here, this is essentially saying, here's somebody that I'm going to begin to serve up. Maybe they're looking at CNN, Fox News, NBC. They're searching on a shopping site. I want to present an ad to get in front of them, at least get their attention. And then they may, at that point, do nothing. They may not come to my site. And then at that point, maybe I need to serve up some content on YouTube, or they're going to hit play on a video on Hulu and they're cheap like me, so they don't have the premium account. So then I serve them ads and I begin to educate them on my product, right? And then they actually say, hey, that's interesting. They click, they come to my site and just kind of look around. And then, as they're searching social media, we serve up some ads in their feed and remind them of our product and the value to them. And then from there, we might, as they read other articles online, serve up additional messaging and ads. And then they might even search for your product or category. And then potentially come back to your site and finally make a purchase. Devin will talk a little bit about touch points, but for those bigger purchases and relationships, it could be dozens of touch points and impressions that you need to have. And so with that, we'll take some time here and talk about some potential ways and channels of how you can reach these customers.
Thanks, Bill. So we've talked a lot about these different channels, right? Different channels. You've probably heard, if you read any sort of marketing article recently, they talk about having a multi-channel approach, having an omni-channel approach, having, cross-channel approach. Well, what does all that mean? In short, it just means hitting people across all the activities they do online to stay in front of them. So it was brought up much earlier in the presentation if we were going to kind of talk about what some of these channels are, and that's exactly what I want to do now. So when we say display advertising, we talk about display advertising, just so everyone is clear, We're talking about banner ads that are on websites that are targeted to people based on what parameters you have set. So if you go to KSL.com, if you go to Weather Channel, you go to ESPN, whatever it would be on your phone, on your computer, and you see the little banners at the top and to the side, that's display advertising. Every one of those ads is targeted. And I think one thing that's kind of interesting to let people know is 95% of them, there are about 1,000 calculations that go on with their ad server that determines when, why, and who the ad is showed to. So it's crazy to see that, unless someone's buying like a homepage takeover or they bought the kind of placement, but for about 95% of the ads, every time you load it, the website and the machines behind are doing about 1,000 calculations. What cookies you know about this person, who's bidding on this person, how much are they bidding, what are they going after, and it shows the ad.
And it's unique to you.
Yeah, it's personalized. It's person next to you is going to see a different ad because it's all very, very personalized. So,
Is it so personal that it knows your name?
no, and that's a good question. I mean, there might be data providers that do, but again, they can't share that. They can't sell that any information. There can't be any PII, they call it, personally identifiable information. They don't know your name, but they know like, okay, demographics about you, interest you're in, probably job, income, what you're looking to buy, where you're
Stores
on,
you've been to.
yeah, purchases you've made, all that kind of stuff, and then it's like, there's an ad to it.
Because they probably track your
They track your
Yeah.
mobile device.
mobile device.
Well, and then companies like American Express, Visa, they'll sell your data. Yeah. So we'll buy it. So I'll go in there and see. Again, it doesn't know who it is, but it's like, all right, I want to buy people in Davis County who have purchased automotive accessory parts in the last 3 months.
So that example you just used, what would that data set cost?
Good question. So the question was, if I,
Is it per individual person?
it's per data segment. So the question was, if I wanted to buy people in Davis County who have been buying automotive parts in the last 3 months, what would that cost me? So the way I explain programmatic audience buying, which is what we're talking about, you'll hear it called RTB, real-time bidding, programmatic, all that kind of stuff, audience buying, behavioral targeting. It essentially works like a stock exchange. So every piece of data is like a stock, right? And it will go up and down based on supply and demand. So if I were to buy people who were in the market for face masks a year ago, I would buy it for free. People would be like, yeah, you can just have it. Why the heck do you want to go after a face mask? Right now, they're like, I'm charging $10 every 1,000 impressions. So it just ranges like that. I would say right now, if I wanted to buy people in Davis County that are looking for automotive parts, the data would probably cost me $1.50. CPM, everything's sold on a CPM basis, which stands for cost per 1,000 impressions. Every time an ad is shown, that's an impression. So on this particular screenshot, there would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 impressions. And so every 1,000 impressions, there's a dollar match, and that's what CPM stands for. It'd probably be $1.50 CPM for the data and probably $2 for the inventory. You also have to pay the website to like put the ad on. So you got the data provider you're buying from, which is going to be Visa, and probably like Factual, which is a location data provider. And then you're going to be buying weather. You're going to give money to weather.com, ESPN. That also gets a whole other thing of networks. But typically, you're not buying directly on one website's platform. You're going to buy on a network. Then you got the network fees in there. So it all starts to add up, but it would probably be like $4 to $5 CPM right now. Yep. So another marketing channel you've heard us refer to a lot is search. So a lot of terms people use for search. The biggest thing you need to know is there's paid search and then there's organic search. Paid search, aka SEM, PPC, search engine marketing, Google Ads. There's so many names for it. That is essentially the ads. Which one here is the little button?
The red one.
Oh, sweet. Games. So when you search in Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use, the search results at the top, for 90% of them are going to be ads. And you can tell because they put a little disclaimer here that says ad. So what that means is this company right here, which is actually one of our clients, is bidding on this term. Right? They want to make sure if someone searches Carmel and Toyota, that they show up. This is part of a defensive strategy we have so that if some of their competitors, Brett Brown Toyota, Tony DeVito Toyota, want to search their name, we want to make sure that we show up ahead of that because this is a really low keyword. But these are this is the paid search. These results are paid for on a per click basis. So again, this is paid search. Anything below the ads is now what falls under the organic or natural search results. You probably heard the term SEO. So yeah, you got to make sure you have SEO. You got to make sure you're an SEO. SEO stands for search engine optimization. And what that is a way that you build and put the content on your website to be friendly toward these search engines, to Google and Bing. So it's like your website architecture, your keyword densities, you get into things like title tags and header tags and meta description, and really geeky stuff when it comes to online marketing. But the better that is, the more relevant it is for search engines, the more likely your website's going to be ranked for those search terms. So again, you asked a question earlier about how would I use the Google Trends data. So if you saw that, hey, based on Google Trends data, this is the main keyword people are searching, well, I would optimize my website to rank for that keyword because then you're going to kind of get the most exposure. So you got paid organic. I was going to say the difference between the two is paid search is like renting and organic is like buying. So long term, your SEO is going to pay huge dividends for you, but it doesn't happen overnight, and it's an investment you got to make in your company. Any good SEO company is going to say, hey, it's going to take 6 to 12 months before you really see results. But once you're there and the results are good, you're going to be getting those clicks for free. Paid like renting, yeah, we can get you there tomorrow, but you got to pay every time someone clicks it, and if you stop paying, then you're not going to be up there anymore. So pros and cons of both. Social. Everyone's heard social a million times. When we talk about social, there's 2 aspects of social marketing. There's the paid social, and then there's the social media management we refer to as brand management. The 2 are very different. Paid social is essentially just paying for ads to show up on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Twitch, LinkedIn, and so forth. That's just like we talked about with display advertising. The same type of programmatic calculations come into play. The same thing is there. You're just now buying inventory and buying ads on the social media platforms, which are huge because people are spending a lot of time there. That's kind of what we do a lot of. Social media management is more like someone who's managing your Instagram account, your Facebook account, the one that's posting the content for you, responding to comments, talking back to customers, things like that. 2 very different approaches. We always kind of feel like brand management and social media management should be done by someone that's in-house at the company because they're just so more closely aligned with what the voice should be, how to respond to people, if they need to do something in store, whatever, they can make those changes. So paid and then the social media management. Video, you've heard a lot of people talk about video, the importance of video. YouTube is the number 2 search engine in the world, and they actually think in a few years it's going to pass Google as far as the most searches on it. Video, you kind of have 2 different types of videos. We call it, you have online video and you have OTT. We'll talk about it in a second. Online video is YouTube. You're going to hear it referred to as pre-roll, as online video. It essentially is ads that are delivered before and during the content people are watching online. So if you've ever gone to YouTube and you go to watch your video, an ad shows up there and it says, hey, you can skip this ad in 5 seconds, or if it's a forced view, you got to watch the whole thing. That's online video. Again, all that same targeting we talked about applies. You're now just hitting people on a different channel. OTT is becoming more and more and more popular. Again, earlier in the presentation, I talked about being able to adapt and change product offerings. OTT is something that we didn't even offer a year ago. And now it's part of our core offering that we probably pitch to every single customer.
Do you know what OTT is?
OTT stands for over-the-top TV. It's also referred to as CTV or connected TV. It is Netflix, it is Hulu, it is Amazon Prime, it is all those great online Disney Plus, all those things you need to buy. A lot of them aren't allowing ads. Netflix, for example, doesn't allow ads. Hulu Plus and some of that doesn't allow ads, but there's a lot that still do. Anytime you're watching stuff, whether it's through like Comcast or whatever it may be, there's opportunities to deliver ads to those people as well too. Native, you've heard it referred to native. Native is essentially ads that appear as like articles in feeds. So like a Facebook ad is technically a native ad because as you're scrolling through your feed, you can't tell if it's an ad or if it's native, like a post that someone else posted. I mean, you kind of do it closely. but in all intents and purposes, it's trying to make it feel like it's native within the content that you're reading. It's a great way to hit people. So if you went back to Phil's example, as people are kind of starting to do research, they read about your company, maybe they're going to go read reviews. They're going to kind of go to different blogs or whatever it is and read reviews and look at articles. It's just another touch point to get in front of those people with kind of a different unique messaging. We always say with native ads, you want to write the copy a little bit differently. You're kind of trying to write it as like an advertorial, if you think about the newspaper advertising days. So it's kind of like an article that's informative, but happens to be for the brand you're trying to represent. Another big one is shopping. Obviously, you got the behemoths with Google Shopping and Amazon. Again, just another touch point. So talk about all these touch points. You want to be in front of these people on all these different touch points. So multi-channel marketing approach, omni-channel marketing approach, cross-channel marketing approach, all those things we talk about. Why are we always talking about them? Why are marketers always saying, hey, you need to make sure you have a plan that reaches all these different channels? Why did I just go through all these different examples with you? A lot of customers will come to us and say, hey, when I look in my Google Analytics, paid search has the best conversion rate for me. I have the lowest cost per conversion. I have the best conversion rate. It's the best time on site. It's the most bang for my buck. Why don't I just put all my money into that?
And conversion definition is?
Conversion rate is essentially, you can determine whatever the conversion you want it to be. Most people look at either a lead, like a call, a form, or a chat, or a purchase, right? Essentially, you're going to say, okay, for my business, when someone does X, that's going to be a conversion for me. If you're an e-commerce store, it's going to be when they purchase. For auto dealers, the biggest conversion now is what they call VDP, which is the vehicle details page view, and that's someone that comes and just looks at a specific VIN of a car. Because more and more and more, Phil mentioned it earlier, but about 70% of people will not even contact a dealer before they go there. They won't call them, they won't chat with them, they won't send in a form, they won't do an e-price, they won't schedule a test drive, they won't do anything. They just walk in and say, hey, do you have a car for sale? They show them the VIN on their phone, and they say, yeah, okay, they want to test drive. So they look at those things, and for auto dealers, they say about every 50 earned VDPs you have will equate to a car sold. So, getting off track a little bit, the conversion can be whatever you want. So people come to us and they say, hey, my paid search has the best conversion. Why wouldn't I put all my money there? We say you can, but that's kind of a short-term strategy, because that's kind of the last things people do, but what else are they doing, right? For automotive, they say there's 27 average touch points and 24 of them are digital. For e-commerce, one of our guys that works for us, Jeff Pearson, he's a huge master in retail. He's worked at like Lids, H.H. Gregg, and all these big brands. He used to work at an agency called Zimmerman, which is one of the biggest agencies in the country. He put together this really cool thought leadership piece on how brands can take advantage of Black Friday. And in that, he shows there's 140 online touch points during the shopping journey that can influence what people buy and who they buy it from. So why are we saying this multi-channel approach is so important? Why are we talking about all these channels? Why is it important to have a cohesive strategy? Because the more opportunities you can get in front of those people, the better chance you have to win their business. And one of the things I would like to show people is this slide. This kind of gets in the weeds, but this is a screenshot from Google Analytics. And this shows you that consumer behavior is not linear. What do I mean by that? 10 years ago when I was doing digital marketing, it was very linear. You delivered an ad to someone, they went to a landing page, and they made an action. There wasn't a lot of shopping going on, right? If you can get in front of that person, they get the website, they would act. Nowadays, people are doing so much research. They will, they'll see an ad, they'll come to your website, and they'll leave, and they'll go to Instagram, they'll do some more research, then they'll read reviews, then they'll go to Amazon, then they'll talk to friends, then they'll come back to search, then they'll come back to your website, doing all of this stuff, right? It's no longer linear. So what this screenshot is, and we'll just talk about this first one here. These are the paths that consumers are taking before they're converting on the website. Again, conversion can be whatever you want it to be. For this case, it's someone that's calling the dealership. So right here, what this tells you is like this person came to the website directly, meaning they directly just typed it in. They probably already knew this brand. And they did that 8 different times over the span of 30 days. Then they left and they went to Google and they did 5 different searches that brought them back to your website. So in there, they're probably doing a lot of research, right? They probably searched something, came to the website, now they didn't find what they want. Maybe the next day they searched again, came to your website, didn't find what they want, they kept doing it. And they came back directly. Then they went to search again, then direct. Then they saw a display, probably remarketed to. Then they came to the website and then they called. There was 2 people that had that same path. This one here shows they came from Google Organic, they left the website, they came back to the website directly, left, came back from search, left, came back from display ads, left, came back organically, and converted. They get crazy. When you start looking at some of these paths, you can see like 27 touch points where the person came to the website 27 different times over all these different ways, channels we call them, and then they converted. What's crazy, if you take a deeper dive and you start to look at those are typically their buyers. It's the people that are doing tons and tons and tons of research. So why are these multi-channel approach so important? Because that's what it takes to win in 2020. Question?
I just have a comment about, I have two,
Awesome.
and I've never had trouble getting customers before, because it's always word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
I still have many customers, but I want to have to tip for me. With education right now, all that parents are experiencing. So I hired a gentleman. They have Google. Waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the phone to ring. And I spend a lot of money and the phone hasn't rang. And so what you're saying, what I'm hearing today, is you have to have a multi approach
Yep.
to this. Because just because you have a web page, just because you put an ad out, it's not.
Yes.
And in the old days.
Yes. And so the question was for those virtually, she has a tutoring business. She's done some Google ads and some Facebook ads. Gentleman helped her build a website. Why is she not getting phone calls? And I would say that's the marketer's dilemma, right? You know, we set up these campaigns. I'm sure the gentleman you hired knows what he's doing. He's trying everything he can to do it. And you're like, why am I not getting phone calls? And there could be a number of different reasons for it. But yeah, you need to have a multi-channel approach for sure. You also need to make sure you're kind of getting in front of the right people with the right message. So we always talk a lot about quality over quantity. So, you know, anyone can drive a lot of traffic to your website, and that's great. But if you jump into your analytics, that's why analytics is so important. And we see this all the time, even with reputable agencies that we go up against. And I was on a call last week with a client that said the same thing. We were kind of going head to head against another agency. And we looked in there like, hey, they're driving 4 times the traffic. So they're like, hey, they're kicking your butt. And we're like, okay, well, let's take a dive further. Their average customer or user, we call it, that's from the website, because they're not a customer yet, they were spending 3 seconds on your website. Like, they're not doing anything. Like, they're just driving traffic to your website, right? Our customers, yeah, we have a quarter of the traffic, but they're spending 1:15 on average on your website. So it's like, what do you want? If you just want traffic, well, we can drive you traffic, but that's not going to do you any good. Your cheapest advertising is going to be your most expensive because it doesn't drive business for you, right? And so we say we want to drive the quality traffic. I don't care if we don't drive as much traffic as our competitors. I just want to make sure we drive the right type of people that are going to do the right things on your website. So that's one thing to look at, is maybe implement Google Analytics, and you can kind of help that person go back to and say, hey, it looks like the Facebook ads, they're great, but no one's spending any time. Maybe we need to change the targeting, or we need to change the messaging. And I'll turn it back over to you.
So we're going to wrap up here in a moment, and I'm not going to touch on too many of these, but I just want to give you a flavor for some, and we'll send out this deck for some potential marketing strategy. So let's say you're a food and beverage franchise and brand. You have 20 locations, and you're trying to move in on your competition. You build a store in a new area, and you say, you know, these 6 different other, you know, competitor locations, that's who I want to steal business from. So you can set up an ad that says anytime somebody walks into, you know, a Jamba Juice or to a Protein Foundry or to a Swig, you know, the fact that they walked into my competitor's location, I want to capture their device ID, and I want to begin serving up advertising to them in perpetuity, saying, I'm going to give you 30% off your first time buy with me. You're basically ripping off your competitor's competition. We do this all day. It's fun. And that type of thing is absolutely possible. You just got to be clever. We're actually running an ad right now for a brand where if you walk into any of his competitors, he'll immediately tell you, come in today, buy one, get one free. And so some really fun things that you can do within a geography and a vicinity. I'll give you I'll give you one more. We talked about automotive a little bit. Imagine you sell car inspections and extended warranties. You're trying to find people who are going to purchase a used vehicle. With some of the resources that Devin talked about, you can actually understand every single person in the Salt Lake Valley that's quote unquote in market, that is likely to buy a used car between this year and this year, this make and model, whatever you want to do, you can say within the next 1 to 2 week period, we can predict who's going to buy a car. We know that. We can tell you any make and model along the Wasatch Front or any geography in the US, and have this client serve up the right ad at the right time when somebody's right at the cusp of, should I buy that used car? How is it looking? Can I have confidence I'm not going to have a lot of maintenance issues? And this client, can right at that moment create that, hey, you can have absolute confidence your purchase is 100% good to go, 200-point inspection with a stamp of approval. And this client can slip in, offer a warranty 3 to 7 days before that purchase. This is the type of, really fun, exciting things you can do because of what we're talking about. So we're going to shift to about how to remove marketing waste here in a moment. But before we do, any questions around, I know we've covered a lot, any questions around potential strategies, how to really understand your customer and, what the approach could be from a multi-channel perspective?
I like. Question. I do like the multi strategy. As I'm looking at the companies I deal with, how do I basically get in front of that's I mean, I look at like Airco and Air, okay, I think about folks that law this and that, okay. Hey, when I talk guarantee my services. But how do I get that on the website or I would net it? And just to say, well, if you're flying net it, how can I infiltrate that?
Yeah. So let's talk on some. So the question this gentleman asked was, how do I get really specific and granular to say, here's a competitor that isn't doing very well? And what we call it is we say, how do we conquest them? How do we basically steal their customers? Or we know that this particular, private travel or, kind of private jet company, they have a preferred caterer. How do I become that preferred? How do I reach people in that organization? And there's ways to do that based on, we know that they work for or are employed for that company. So those are things that might be a good kind of side conversation after, but we can be that granular. So great question.
I think it'd be great to get more information about
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, no, absolutely. We can have kind of an addendum that goes with it.
So here's a question. In this digital era, what is there a magic mixture between traditional marketing or those traditional methods where they put in a way out, say, billboard or newspaper or but I know the digital had a big impact for you. But
It's interesting. I think so the question is traditional versus digital. Are some of those going away? What we'll continue to find is that digital will continue to trend upward as people are doing this more and more and less of looking around them. However, I will say if you're trying to make a big splash, a big presence, you've probably seen the Homey billboards, right? They were a former client of mine at my last agency. They have a very effective strategy. It's billboard digital, period. That's it. They don't do TV. They don't really do radio as much, but we want to educate and have legitimacy in billboards and reach the masses in a particular geography. And then we're going to close them, and that mid to lower funnel is digital. And so there's a kind of a balancing act in your audience and who you reach.
I can jump a little bit there too. So I think it's important to know your business and your audience, right? The other thing I want to point out, when we talk about having like a multi-channel approach, you don't necessarily have to be on every channel, right? Depending on what your budget and what your audience and kind of who you're going after. it's good to be cognizant of all those channels, but you don't need to be spending money on every single channel. Absolutely. There's still a place for traditional advertising, absolutely. I think it depends on what your goals are, who you're trying to go after. But we work with a lot of automotive dealers, and all the automotive dealers, which are tier 3, right, the individual dealerships, they get co-op money from the big brands, Ford, Toyota, Honda, and so forth. 2 years ago, Ford went to all of their dealerships and said, if you want to have co-op advertising, it is now mandated that from now forward, at least 50% of your budget needs to be digital. They've now changed and encouraged, they still kept it at mandated at 50, but they've encouraged people to have about 70% of their budget digital versus 30% traditional. So it's continuing to shift that way. Most of our auto dealers are about that 70-30. More are probably 100% digital and no traditional, if they might have a few little billboards or kind of TV, things like that. But even the TV is starting to become more digital because YouTube is the biggest TV station in every market in every country, in the country. And so it's like, well, you want to be on KSL, which is great, but how many people of the ads that you see in KSL are going to be in the market for a Toyota Tundra? Not very many, right? It's good for branding, that's great. But we can target people who are in the market for a car, and we can just target the general public as well too, but still hit them on an area that's a lot more cost effective. So I would say about 70-30 is kind of where most people are. Is this my section again? Or did I just hide it? Okay, good. How to remove marketing waste, right? That's the number one thing people want to do when they come to us. They either want to increase revenue or remove the waste. And also, you kind of brought up something before. A lot of people will come to us and say, what's the silver bullet, right? What is the number one thing I should be doing digitally? What's the silver bullet? And we always say, there's no silver bullet, but our silver bullet, we like to say, is doing a lot of little things the right way. So if you can have your website positioned right, if you can have your paid search campaign running well, you can have your display campaign running well, if you can have your email campaigns doing well, if you can do all these little things the right way, having your Google My Business, your social, all that kind of stuff, if everything's working together, that's kind of the best silver bullet we've been able to find. So how to remove marketing spend waste and more fully attribute advertising revenue growth with the right marketing channels. Whoops. So I'm going to come back to my favorite tool on the web, which is Google Analytics. Google Analytics, we talked about it before by gathering data and insights on your customer. But the number one thing I'm using Google Analytics for is to track how people came to our customer's website. That's pretty much what they hire us to do, right? We're hired to drive traffic to their website, increase conversion, increase engagement, things like that. So we're going to talk about utilizing UTM tags to track in Google Analytics. This gets a little bit complicated. I don't expect you to walk out here today fully knowing what UTM tags are, but I want you to be aware of them, and I want you to then go do some research on how you can utilize them or challenge your marketing director or your agency or whoever's kind of handling your website to utilize. The UTM tags are essentially a way you tag your URL, like a final URL in an ad, in order to cleanly show the traffic that came into your website. So we'll kind of talk through it. We'll give some examples, but don't hesitate with questions. So there's a cool tool online that's called the Campaign URL Builder. It's free. If you just go to Google and search Google URL Builder, it'll be the first result there. It'll take you to a website that looks like this. And this basically allows you to build the UTM tags in the way that you want. So you start by putting in your website URL. So this is going to be the URL that you want to send people to. So let's say you're sending out an email campaign, or you're putting it out on Facebook or on Google or wherever it may be, you place it out on someone's website, and you say, where do I want to send that traffic to? Someone clicks on my ad, where do I want them to go on my website? Maybe it's just your homepage, maybe it's a landing page on your website or whatever. So you start with that. This is going to be your website URL. You have three main categories here. That's all we're going to talk about. We're not going to get into these two. You have source, medium, and campaign name. What these do, maybe I'm going to jump forward and jump back. What these do is these tell Google Analytics to label this traffic how I'm telling it to, right? So essentially you're saying, okay, people that come to the website from this URL that I'm going to give to wherever I'm going to run this ad, this is how I want it to show up in Google Analytics. So when I'm looking at all my traffic sources, I can clearly see, okay, this was from that campaign I did. This was from that channel I ran on. So going back here, the source is going to show up here on the first side of the forward slash. That's going to be the source. So for this client screenshot you see, we like to label all the campaigns they run through us as Max Connect. So you know that's the source of your traffic. Is us as your agency. So you got Pantera, you got Google, Direct, they're running a campaign with iHeart, they have this Vin URL thing, and so forth. That is the source. Whatever you put into this box is going to be what shows up here. So if I wrote campaign sources Devon, it's going to say Devon in Google Analytics. If I write Davis Tech, it's going to say Davis Tech in Google Analytics. It doesn't matter what you call it. You can come up with whatever vernacular you want. You're just telling Google Analytics, I want you to label this traffic with that source. Then you have Medium, which we like to use for the different channels. So usually it's display, it's social, it's search, it's video, email, whatever it may be. Again, so you have your source and you have your medium, and then you have your campaign name. The campaign name might just be more like what the messaging was for that. So for this example we're using here, Phil has worked on this really cool Next Normal campaign that we're doing for us internally to market Max Connect. We call it a thought leadership piece. And so what I built here was, okay, I wanted to know it came from us because we're the ones doing the marketing. This URL, I'm going to go put out on social media. So I want to know it's coming from social. And it's specific to the Next Normal campaign. And this is where I want to send the traffic. So you put these things in here, and then it generates this URL for you. I kind of made it bigger. This is the full URL. So all these things on here after the URL, these again are just telling Google Analytics how to categorize the traffic. Come in here, and you can see, okay, this is from Max Connect Display, Max Connect Search, Max Connect Social. This is from Google Organic, which means someone searched on Google, they went to the organic rankings, and then they visited your website. Direct means they just directly typed in your URL in the toolbar, and so forth. What's cool in here is then you can see, okay, what is my display campaign? All right, well, it drove 6,048 sessions with 3,457 users, had a bounce rate of 25%, an average session duration of 1:36, a conversion rate of 11.74%. Okay, well, how's my search doing? Okay, here's what search did. All right, how's my social doing? So you can come in here, and if you go in here, I referenced earlier a conversation we had with a client that said, hey, you know, they're driving 4 times the traffic you are. And I went into analytics and was like, yeah, we're only driving 3 seconds. This is where I found that information. So it had us and it had our competitor. And again, they were up here with, they had more users and sessions, but when I went over here, we were at 1:13 and they were at 3 seconds. So I could say, well, if you just want traffic, we'll drive traffic for you. But if you want customers coming to your website, that's what we'll do. And so there's some really cool stuff in here you can see. So you mentioned earlier about that you hired the gentleman to help kind of promote some stuff on Facebook and Google. If you had Google Analytics set up with those UTM tags, you can look in there and it would say, you know, Facebook, whatever his company is, whatever, say Facebook ads. And you might come over here and be like, okay, like look at this consumer X time referral. I don't even know what this is. There's no time on site. That's like a bot. That's like something just coming and leaving. So if you went and looked at your Facebook ad and it showed like 5 seconds, you could go back to the gentleman and say, hey, I get that we're running some ads. It looks like it's driving traffic to the website. It might not be the right traffic. We need to change the targeting or the messaging because it's not generating any results. And so this is where we come here all day long, and we have about 12 digital managers on our team. The first thing I make sure all of them do in the training process is you need to master Google Analytics. Because more than anything, this is how you're going to remove marketing waste. We're going to run a campaign, and you're going to come in here and be like, man, our display campaign's not doing well. How can I improve that? They go make changes, they document the changes, they come back into Google Analytics and say, okay, great. I changed from going after this audience to this audience. I changed the messaging from this to this. And when I did that, my average time on site went from 1:36 to 3 minutes. Okay, that was a good change. So again, UTM tags with Google Analytics, dive into it, find out as much as you can about it, and it's going to be the #1 way it's going to help you remove your marketing waste.
So just to wrap up, what's the next step? We talked through a lot today, and we want to just leave you with kind of 3 big takeaways. The first is seek audience data and insights. Try to learn as much as you can about your customers, audiences, and really study and understand them. Understand what the job to be done is. Why are they coming to you or to your competitor? What's the need that they have that you're trying to? So first and foremost, understand your audience. Hopefully we've given you some tools to know how to do that. Secondly, map that customer journey. Speak to them in the right way across the right channels. You don't want to speak to somebody in a very serious tone. It's kind of like you're dating. And if the first time you walk up and introduce yourself, you say, you want to go on a date, it'd be a little freaked out. And it gives you an opportunity to pace the messaging, the pace, the frequency, to help that person become comfortable with you and your brand. And then lastly, as Devin just talked about, properly set up attribution tracking. Understand what's working and what isn't. As you set up goals and conversions in your analytics or your website or your business, actually know what's moving meaningful business outcomes forward. And then stop doing what isn't working, or pivot and adapt and continue to optimize. So these are kind of our three biggest takeaways in learning and being able to, set up and succeed, more so with online marketing. So with that, I know we're about at time. Any kind of final questions? I know we talked to many things, kind of throughout our 2 hours.
Fast.
Well, we've certainly appreciated being with you, and thank you for the time, and happy to help in any way if you have follow-up. And we'll make sure that this slide deck, sent out to everyone, and you have it.
Beautiful analytics is critical, and you did a great job expressing that. But it sounds like you need to have a minimum amount of use for the Google Analytics data to reach a certain level.
So I want to clarify, I might have clarified the two different things. Google Analytics doesn't need a minimum number of searches. It is just a analytics tracking tool that you place on your website, whether you get 1 visitor a year or 1,000 a day. Now, yes. Now, I was going to say is one thing that can happen, we see with clients, we always say, hey, we need to let the data mature to get some time in there. Because if you don't have enough data to make it statistically significant, there could be one user or one person that throws your data set out of whack, right? You could go in there and be like, oh, I didn't think our customers were in the market for this. It might have just been one person, but if you're looking at 10 users, right, it's going to be 10% of the traffic. So you want to have enough people. Once you start to getting to where you're having hundreds or 1,000, user sessions you're looking at, the data is going to be pretty significant for you. So Google Analytics, though, will track regardless. If you have one person that visits your website a year, it will say how they came, where they came from, what they know about them. The Google Trends, though, is it takes enough searches for there to be trends.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Appreciate your time today.
We'd like to thank Phil and Devin for being here from Max Connect. We have quite a larger audience online than we do in-house. So we wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to be in here. We hope you found this information as useful as I did. I have so many takeaways from today. So we will see you in 2 weeks. We will be talking about another dear competitor. I didn't take my notes of what it is. So thanks again for being here today. We'll see you next time. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
That was just
that was fun.
wonderful.